let's go ahead and get started. Call the meeting of Erie County Board of Elections to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bale.
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here.
Mr. Drexel.
Here.
Mrs. Showerman.
Here.
Here.
Mr. Winarski.
Here.
Here. Hearing of the public, are there any citizens to be heard? Any citizens online to be heard? Hearing, see none, I'll entertain the motion to accept the minutes from the 9/26 and 10/24 Board of Election meetings.
So moved. Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by councilpersons Scatella and Cope. Any discussion? Call for the question.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Mr. Drexel.
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman.
Yes.
Mr. Scatella.
Yes.
Mr. Winarski.
Yes.
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Item 5, we'll move right to our chief clerk and the election report.
We're going to be having a more thorough election report at the next Board of Election meeting. We're still in the process of compiling a lot of the data from how much we spent, how many workers we had, a lot of our numbers on this end. So we're looking forward to catching everyone up at the next meeting on that. We did have a really good turnout though, 75%, 75.7% turnout. Total ballots cast 138,568. As you know, the recount was stopped midway through, so gave a little bit of a break to our staff. So everybody convened today to have a little luncheon and celebrate and probably prepared certificates for all of our helpers. It was a really positive experience. So with all the extra work we had this year, we're just really glad that we have the staff that we do. I spoke with Attorney Tallarico earlier. We have to certify the election results today. There was, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see the email, there was an appeal for the challenges. And it was Judge Brabender's decision to not count the ballots that were missing a poll worker's signature. So it said that he spoke with both parties and that neither party was intending to appeal that decision at this point. So it's up to you if you would like to further appeal that or continue with the certification. We prepared a certification for you in either event so that we either make a note of the ones that are going through the court process or we certify what we have. That's finalized today.
Comments, board.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
it didn't appear from our solicitor's email that this was going to have like any real impending effect on future ballots, and it could be recalled at that time to be reviewed if they needed to, so we should mess with it.
I think particularly because if the two parties are not pursuing it, I mean, they dropped their litigation. We're not even asking Braebender to make a decision, right?
Yeah,
And he made one regardless. And if neither of those two parties are willing to pursue any sort of appeal, I don't know why we should take it upon ourselves to have the taxpayers pay for such an appeal.
Anyone else? Any, Jim, Ellen, comments, thoughts?
As far as the ballot with the poll worker's signature being missing, that was only one, correct?
There was one on the last round, but there were about
124 maybe, I thought, but I don't quote me on that number.
Without the poll worker's signature?
Oh, no, I don't think it's that many. Here, let me pull up the email.
I think there was only one without the poll worker's signature.
That was only in the batch of.
That
40.
was in the last batch.
altogether, there was 125.
Okay, thank you.
Between the two different times that we had the hearing, the two different hearings, there were 125. And of those, there were about 80 that had one poll worker signature, just didn't have two.
Okay, as you know, I'm down by Harrisburg, so I don't have my paperwork with me.
Bring us back some Hershey chocolate, Hershey Kisses. Be safe, my friend, be safe.
Thank you.
Jim, you got any questions relative to any of that?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, okay, so I'll entertain a motion to certify the 2024 Erie County General Election at this time.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded by councilpersons Drexel and Scatella. Any further discussion? Here and seeing none, call for the question.
Mr. Drexel,
Yes.
Mrs. Showerman,
Yes,
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes,
Mr. Bale.
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. And I'll just keep going right to item B, and you want to speak to that as well, Karen?
In B, we had discussed putting a bid out for a truck a couple months ago, and there had been some discussion, considerations over time, and we're back here to make a final decision. Holman Chevrolet has left this on their lot for us, and they need us to make a decision. We have the money in our budget for this year to go ahead and do that.
Questions, thoughts, comments? Questions, thoughts, comments, Ellen, Jim, on the purchase of the vehicle?
no,
no, I'm good. I'll take one though. New truck.
Well, actually,
Wait till
I was
it's
waiting
agenda.
for you. I was just gonna make sure you were still with us. We wanted to use your discount.
Or maybe something with a reconstructed title or something.
We can talk after the meeting offline.
I don't think they're.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll entertain that motion as well.
Second,
Been probably moved and seconded by councilpersons Copeland and Bale. Discussion. Call for the question.
Mrs.
Gotcha.
Showerman,
Yeah, I just wanted
Hold
to,
on.
thank the clerk for her hard work in putting that bid out and, doing the legwork to get this done. Appreciate it.
Any further discussion, comment? Call for the question.
Mrs. Showerman,
yes,
Mr. Scatella,
Yes.
Mr. Winarski,
Yes,
Mr. Bale,
yes,
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
Mr. Drexel,
Yes.
Chairman Horton.
Yes. Okay, any questions or comments from the board before we adjourn?
Sure.
Yes.
I had a couple, questions or maybe issues that I hope that we could get a chance to discuss. You know, as, the Democratic chair pointed out at our last meeting, there's 17 different places on our provisional ballots where we can make a mistake. And I think one of the ones that hurt my heart the most is when our poll workers and the judges of elections failed to sign an envelope that doesn't seem to be a fault in the voter, but in our own staff. And I acknowledge that those are elected officials too, and that you can only train so much, but are there any thoughts or plans as to how to hopefully prevent some of the same issues that we had on the provisional ballots?
So I was thinking that we could put some information in the actual voter's hand, like when we give them a provisional ballot envelope, we should give them a handout with instructions on how to complete it as well. That's one idea.
Or something with visual, so then if you had a language issue that you at least had that sort of a version to it as well.
Similar to the mail ballot instructions.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something, because it's a unique situation for most voters, like how many people can say they ever voted provisionally before. It's not a ton, even now, it's like a extremely low percentage, so. I mean, hopefully we never have to go to the route of having to use those again, but. if we do, just having that as a backup in place, I think would be an easy thing to do that wouldn't be like a huge cost to like print those out with us.
Well, just from my observation of going to the polls during that day, there were several where, you know, they had a pretty good line, that was, a little bit hectic, you know, that they were working really hard to get everybody's issues taken care of. And I just wonder if maybe the judges or the minority inspectors that were supposed to sign, maybe in the moment, were just so busy that they set it aside, maybe thinking that they would sign it later, or not considering that they need to go back and sign. And I'm, that's one of the, to me, if somebody doesn't remember the date, or for some reason fills out the wrong information, can't do anything about that. But the idea that the poll workers might actually accidentally disenfranchise a voter, that to me is just the worst thing here. And I'm guess on that issue in particular, it'd be nice to know if there's something that we can do to ensure that they at least do their small role in that process.
Maybe that handout can be basically a checklist for the poll workers to go over with the voter. So that they can look at it, they can see the process, and then basically they can say that they've completed all those steps. There's no reason for it not to be completed, the polls, when you can do it right there in person, but that's a extra redundancy or measure to make sure that it gets done that way, maybe, something like that.
I can say from being judge of elections for a little over 20 years, provisional ballots are going to be there. There's always a few, but they do a great job training the judges of elections on what needs to be done with them. And it was always, I had my own checklist. You started at the top and went down and turned it over and started over and made sure everything was checked. So it may be that the polls, as Rock said, were so busy that day that something got skipped.
And not to at all insinuate that we do anything wrong, because I know you guys are phenomenal. It just looks like an area where we might be able to improve a little bit. So, and I've talked to the other poll workers, and I've heard that they've had great training. They were really well read in on the provisional process, and it is a little onerous, but just sucks, knowing my own relatives were among those that had their ballot tossed, and, you know, just sucks.
I think that the Department of State will probably be taking a look at this as well, because Erie County wasn't the only county experiencing this. So I expect further instruction from the Department of State as well.
I did.
It was a-
Go ahead.
It was it was a topic of conversation at CCAP yesterday and today as far as election reform goes. And it was one of the things that needs to be addressed. So they are looking at it.
In addition to training, during our poll worker training, we knew we were going to have a higher amount. We didn't know how many more for this election, so we did send out additional training and videos for the poll workers. And the feedback was that they felt very confident going into it with the provisionals. But between the volume of voters that day and the volume of voters for provisional ballots, it certainly is going to increase the room for errors. And that's too many people whose vote may not have counted. I mean, if anybody's vote's not counting because of that, that's too many. So we definitely want to look into whether the state can make some changes on their envelope, or if we're making a tutorial. But we have a great case in point next year during our training to make sure, and we can practice that in the training module.
The other thing I was curious about, have we been earnestly looking at another vendor to provide our mail-in ballot services?
We are getting together the specs that we know we need so that we can put together the right RFP to go out. And that's going to be a conversation with Tanya, with Megan, with Jim, myself, because we all have, we can fine tune our needs and what we're looking for the next proposal. So hopefully at our next, I expect at our next Board of Elections meeting, that'll be ready to go and you guys can take a look at that and send that out.
Are we concerned about the timeline for the primary to actually be able to change directions, and or does it look like that's fairly within our ability?
This last one went out in January of 2023, and it was accepted at the end of, or somewhere in the middle of March of 2023,
And used in that, primary?
and we used them for the primary.
Thank you. I don't know what that process looks like.
Yeah, we should fire them. Like. Without remorse. There's no way we should ever use them.
I wish that this body would sue them out of existence so that it never happens to another county in any state.
I agree with that. That would also cost us more money. I'm cool with just firing that.
Mr. Teller, it's not- it's going to-
And I remind you all, you're still on meeting, there are some civilians. Can't say I disagree with anything you said. Any other comments for the good of the order? Keep us apprised on that in case they may not even be able to deliver. And it's the first thing, and I know this typically is something us hiring, it typically takes 4 to 6 months, I would think, to switch gears. So there are some questions that need to be asked in that vein. We need to make sure they haven't folded up their tent and ran. And there is no election IQ already. And then we're 60 days out trying to find a vendor to do a primary. That's fair, right? All right.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I will say, I'll have my comments. I think that Karen and Tanya, there's not an award that I could give you that would come anywhere near the gratitude that I have for your leadership over the last 90 days. Because I know this is a process, and it wasn't just the election day that the public tends to see. And I know how emotional it was for some of our employees and even for some of us. But you kept focused on the work, and Erie County was really, really blessed to have both of you. Sure, my colleagues feel the same way.
Absolutely.
If there was anything that I had any concern about, and we kind of talked about it during budget, it's what if something happens? Yeah. So, and that's always a concern with talent anywhere. What do you do when key people in your organization decide to move on and something happens? And so there's the commercial said, I think 20-ounce soda at the ball field, $11. Baseball hat, $22. Time with you in the election office and the job that you did is priceless. So we thank you. My family thanks you individually, because there are a lot of us that vote here too, and they know how vested I was. I'm sure your family members all know how vested you all were in the election and the eyes of the entire world. Y'all did that stuff. And that is why, before and now, and I'll continue to say, that Erie County is truly indeed the gold standard for the Commonwealth, because I'm not sure there's another place in the county that could have pulled it off. Yeah. So we had help from many people, and I truly believe that's because of the relationships that you had. There was from all parts of the country, people were able to acknowledge first that it was not our fault, And second, they acknowledge that you're their one grandchild. Thank you so very much. This meeting is adjourned. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, happy Thanksgiving.
Are we not seeing each other for the rest of the week?
Have we not seen enough of each other for the last